My name is Audrey, and at 33 years old, I gave up everything for 4 years to support my younger sister Heather's dream of becoming a doctor. $9,000 a year. It might not sound like a lot to some, but it almost broke me. Then came her graduation day. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Your job is done. You shouldn't be here." My mother nodded in agreement. "You don't know your place," she added, followed by laughter that still echoes in my mind. I smiled politely and walked away from the celebration. Before I continue this story that changed my family forever, let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever sacrificed for someone who didn't appreciate it, hit that like and subscribe button. I grew up in a middle-class family in Portland, Oregon, with parents who never hid their favoritism. From the beginning, my younger sister Heather was the golden child, the one destined for greatness. I was just there. I remember my 8th birthday party. My parents invited my entire class, then spent the whole afternoon showcasing Heather's piano skills to all my friends instead of celebrating me. By the end of the day, everyone was talking about how talented my 5-year-old sister was. I sat alone with my unopened presents. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. When I brought home straight A's, my mother would nod dismissively and immediately ask about Heather's science project. When I won first place in the regional debate championship in high school, my father missed it for Heather's soccer practice. Not even a game. Just practice. Still, I worked incredibly hard. I got a partial scholarship to the state university, juggled 2 part-time jobs, maintained a 3.8 GPA, and graduated with a business degree. My graduation was attended by my father and a very bored Heather. My mother had a minor cold and decided to stay home. When I showed them my diploma, my father's first comment was, "That's nice. But remember, Heather will be going to medical school someday." After college, I entered the workforce during the recession. Finding a traditional job was nearly impossible. Companies were laying off experienced workers, not hiring new grads. Instead of giving up, I started a small online business selling specialized marketing services to local companies. The first 3 years were brutal. I worked 16-hour days, lived in a tiny studio where I could touch my kitchen and bed at the same time, and ate more ramen noodles than I care to admit. By year 7, my business had turned a corner. I had 5 employees, a real office downtown, and a growing client list. I finally felt like I was building something meaningful. Through all of this, my parents' attitude never changed. My mother only called to mention Heather's latest accomplishment or ask if I could help with her expenses. My achievements were treated as expected. Heather's were celebrated as exceptional. When my father died 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, he left a modest inheritance. It was split 70-30 in Heather's favor because, as they said, she has medical school ahead of her. I didn't fight it. My attorney friend Melissa told me I should, but I wanted to be the bigger person to show them I wasn't petty about money. Shortly after the funeral, Heather announced her acceptance to Boston University School of Medicine. She graduated at the top of her class with a biochemistry degree, and everyone was thrilled. But there was a problem. Despite her academic success, she hadn't secured enough financial aid or scholarships to cover the expensive tuition and living costs in Boston. My mother called me one evening, her voice sweeter than I'd heard in years. "Audrey, darling, we need to talk about Heather's future." She explained that with Dad gone, they were counting on me to help with medical school expenses. "You have that business now," she added. "This is what family does." I hesitated. My business was finally profitable, but I was still reinvesting most earnings into growth. Taking out $9,000 a year would seriously slow my expansion. Still, part of me hoped that by helping Heather, I might finally earn the recognition I'd craved my whole life. So I agreed. A 4-year commitment. $9,000 annually for Heather's tuition and living expenses. We didn't sign any paperwork, but I documented every transfer in my records. In my mind, it was a gift. An investment in our relationship as sisters. The first year, Heather called to thank me after each payment. By the second year, the calls turned to texts. By the third, my mother would just call to remind me when payments were due, like I was another bill to be paid. As med school went on, Heather's attitude shifted from indifference to entitlement. If I missed her call because I was in a meeting, she'd leave voicemails like, "I guess your little business is more important than my education." When I had to delay a payment because a client paid late, My mother called to berate me for sabotaging Heather's future. Still, I persisted. I made every payment on time, even when it meant taking out a small business loan during a slow quarter. I told myself it would all be worth it when Heather graduated. Then I thought she'd finally see how much I'd sacrificed. Surely then I'd be seen, appreciated, acknowledged as a good sister. 2 months before graduation, a formal invitation arrived. A thick, cream-colored card with gold embossing. Boston University School of Medicine commencement. Heather's name was listed among the graduates. I ran my fingers over the raised lettering, feeling pride and hope. Despite our strained relationship, I was genuinely happy for her. I saw this as a chance for a fresh start. I cleared my schedule for that week, delegated client meetings to my senior staff, and postponed a business acquisition discussion. Taking a week off was a big sacrifice. My business still needed constant attention, but this was a once-in-a-lifetime event. I wouldn't miss it. Next, I looked for the perfect graduation gift. After hours online, I settled on a luxury watch from a brand many doctors favor. It cost $3,000, almost wiping out my personal savings for the month. But I wanted to give her something meaningful, something she could wear during residency and beyond, something to remind her of me. Then what to wear? I wanted to look successful but not flashy, professional but not stiff. I spent a whole Saturday shopping and found a tailored navy blue dress that felt just right. I paired it with modest heels and the pearl earrings my father gave me at my college graduation. Looking in the mirror, I hoped I'd finally look worthy of standing beside my accomplished sister. The flight to Boston felt endless. I rehearsed conversations in my head, imagining Heather introducing me proudly to her professors, thanking me publicly. I pictured my mother finally looking at me with the same pride she always gave Heather. Those fantasies got me through the turbulence and cramped seats. When I landed, I texted Heather. Her reply was brief. Busy with graduation prep. Mom's at the house. Take an Uber there. No, thanks for coming. No, excited to see you. Still, I stayed optimistic. She was probably just stressed. The Uber dropped me at my mother's rented townhouse in Cambridge, where she'd been staying to help Heather prepare for residency. When she opened the door, her greeting was lukewarm. "Oh, you're here already," she said, checking her watch. "Heather won't be back until late. There's a small room upstairs. Don't touch anything in the main bathroom, that's Heather's." I dragged my suitcase up to a converted office with an air mattress on the floor. Not even a real pillow, just a decorative cushion from the sofa. I unpacked and tried to make the best of it. That evening, Heather arrived with a tall, handsome man, James, a fellow med student and her boyfriend of 6 months. I was surprised she hadn't mentioned him. "So you're the famous sister who's been helping Heather through med school," he said warmly. "She's told me how crucial your support has been." Heather cut in. "James, could you bring my bags upstairs? I need to shower before dinner." As he left, she turned to me with a tight smile. "You look different. Did you lose your job or something?" "No, the business is doing well," I said, confused. "Why? Your dress looks off the rack," she said dismissively. I thought someone with a successful business would dress better. Before I could respond, my mother joined in. Audrey never did understand the importance of appearance. Not everyone can present themselves properly. They shared a look that left me out completely, even though I was standing right there. I swallowed my hurt and changed the subject. "The graduation sounds exciting. Do you have many friends attending?" That launched Heather into a detailed description of her med school friends, their accomplishments, their prestigious residencies. Not once did she ask about my life, my business, or anything that had happened since we last spoke. Dinner was at an upscale restaurant where Heather had reservations. James, to his credit, tried to include me, asking about my business and life in Portland. Each time, though, my mother or Heather steered the conversation back to med school or people I didn't know. When the check came, there was an awkward pause. Then my mother said, "Audrey, would you get this? It's the least you can do for Heather's graduation celebration." The bill was over $200, but I paid without complaint, not wanting tension. As we left, I overheard my mother whisper to Heather, "I don't know why she had to come early. The ceremony would have been enough." Heather replied, "She'll just embarrass me in front of my professors. Make sure she sits with extended family, not with us." I pretended not to hear, but their words cut deep. Back at the townhouse, I retreated to my air mattress and cried silently into the cushion. After all my sacrifices, nothing had changed. I was still the outsider, still unworthy of respect or affection. But I held on to a sliver of hope. Maybe graduation day would be different. Maybe in that moment of achievement, there'd be enough joy to include me, too. The morning of graduation was bright and clear. A perfect spring day in Boston. I woke early, nervous but excited. This was it. The culmination of 4 years of sacrifice. Today I thought our relationship would turn a corner. I dressed carefully in my navy blue dress, did subtle makeup, and styled my hair in a sleek updo. Looking in the mirror, I gave myself a pep talk. Today is about Heather, not you. Be gracious. Be supportive. Be the bigger person. I'd repeated those words for years, but today they felt especially important. Downstairs, my mother barely acknowledged me, but James offered coffee and a kind smile. You look very nice, he said. Heather's lucky to have such a supportive sister. My mother snorted softly but said nothing. We took an Uber to the university. The campus buzzed with excited families in their finest, carrying bouquets and balloons. I'd bought white lilies, Heather's favorite, to give her after the ceremony. The auditorium was massive, filled with proud families. We found our seats, in the extended family section, far from the prime seating where my mother had arranged to sit. James looked confused. Shouldn't we all sit together? Audrey will be fine here, my mother said dismissively. Come, we have reserved seats near the front. James hesitated but followed her. I sat alone, surrounded by strangers. When the ceremony began, I craned my neck to spot Heather. Finally, I saw her, poised and confident in her cap and gown. Despite everything, my heart swelled with pride. She'd worked incredibly hard for this. When her name was called, I stood and applauded loudly, blinking back tears. This was what my $9,000 a year had helped achieve. This was what all those sacrifices were for. In that moment, it felt worth it. After the ceremony, everyone gathered in a reception hall. I searched for Heather and finally found her surrounded by classmates, my mother beaming beside her. I approached hesitantly, clutching the lilies. Congratulations, Dr. Reynolds, I said warmly. I'm so proud of you. I offered the flowers. She took them with a brief thanks, then introduced me to her friends flatly. This is my sister Audrey. No explanation of who I was or what I'd done. One professor shook my hand. It's wonderful you could be here to support your sister. Family is so important during these challenging years. Yes, I agreed. I was happy to help. Actually, I've been contributing $9,000 a year toward Heather's tuition and expenses throughout med school. The moment I said it, I knew I'd made a mistake. A chill fell over the group. Heather's smile froze. My mother's eyes narrowed. The professor looked surprised. Well, that's very generous. Family support makes all the difference. Heather cut in abruptly. Audrey likes to exaggerate her importance. She turned to me, her voice a harsh whisper everyone could hear. Your job is done. You shouldn't be here. I felt like I'd been slapped. What? My mother stepped closer, her smile tight. You don't know your place, she said, then laughed like it was a joke. Some of Heather's friends joined in awkwardly. James looked stunned. Our eyes met. I saw confusion and sympathy. Humiliated, I stood there in front of everyone. The lilies lay forgotten on a table. I see, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Congratulations again, Heather. I wish you all the best in your residency. With as much dignity as I could muster, I smiled politely, turned and walked away. No one called after me. No one tried to stop me. Outside, the beautiful day continued, oblivious to my pain. I found a bench in a quiet corner and finally let the tears come. For years of financial sacrifice, of putting my business on hold, of believing I was investing in our relationship, all crashed down in that moment of public rejection. My phone buzzed. A text from Heather. Don't make a scene by leaving early. Just stay away from my friends and leave your gift at the reception desk before you check out of your hotel. I didn't respond. Instead, I took a rideshare back to my hotel, a different place from where they were staying. I'd booked it as a backup, a prescient decision. In my room, I broke down completely. Makeup streamed down my face as I sobbed into a pillow that was at least meant for crying. I cried until I had no tears left. That night I ordered room service and scrolled through social media, only to find fresh wounds. Heather had already posted graduation photos. Dozens of smiling pictures with friends, professors, our mother. I wasn't in a single one, as if I hadn't been there. The caption read, "Couldn't have done it without my amazing support system. #MD, #NewDoctor, #blessed." The irony was almost laughable. The one person who'd contributed $36,000 wasn't worth a mention or a photo. I turned off my phone and stared at the ceiling, wondering how I'd been so blind, so desperate for approval that I'd let myself be used so completely. The worst part wasn't the money, though that stung. It was realizing that after all these years, my sister and mother saw me as nothing more than an ATM, a resource to be drained then dismissed. As I drifted into exhausted sleep, one thought crystallized. This would not stand. For the first time in my life, I was done being the bigger person. Done sacrificing without recognition. Done being a doormat. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow I would stand up for myself. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Heather's cold voice. "Your job is done. You shouldn't be here." Followed by my mother's cruel laughter. By dawn, my sadness had hardened into righteous anger. As morning light filtered in, I sat with my laptop and methodically documented everything. First, a spreadsheet of every payment I'd made. 16 transactions, $36,000 total. Seeing it quantified made my stomach clench. Then I pulled up my text and email history. Reviewing 4 years of communications objectively, I saw a clear pattern. They contacted me primarily when payments were due. When I mentioned my business challenges or achievements, they ignored those parts or redirected back to Heather's needs. While scanning old emails, I noticed something odd. Heather had once forwarded me a tuition bill, accidentally copying me instead of our mother. The amount was significantly less than what I'd been told she needed. Where had the extra money gone? I took a break to shower and order breakfast, my mind racing. As I ate, I scrolled through social media again, this time analytically. There were pictures of Heather on weekend trips to New York and DC, dining at expensive restaurants, on a spring break trip to Cancun, all during med school, all while I was supposedly helping her make ends meet because med students couldn't work. My phone buzzed. Surprisingly, it was James. "I'm sorry about yesterday. That wasn't right. Are you okay?" His unexpected kindness brought fresh tears, but I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't sure who to trust. After breakfast, I called my attorney friend Melissa. She listened patiently as I poured out the whole story, years of favoritism, the graduation humiliation. "I'm so sorry, Audrey," she said when I finished. "That's terrible. But was there any formal agreement? Any written contract?" "No formal contract," I sighed. "I trusted my family. But I have emails and texts acknowledging the payments and their purpose, plus bank records." "That's something," Melissa said. "Legally, you could make a case this was a loan, not a gift, given the regular payments and their acknowledgments. But honestly, do you want to go down that road with your family?" The question hung in the air. I'd always been the peacekeeper, forgiving, forgetting. But where had that gotten me? "I need to think about it," I told her. "But can you draft something official looking? Something that presents the money as a loan now due?" "I can do that," she agreed. "It won't be legally binding without their signatures, but it might be a wake-up call." After hanging up, I booked a flight home for that afternoon without telling Heather or my mother. I left the expensive watch with the hotel concierge to deliver to the townhouse with a simple note, "Congratulations, Dr. Reynolds." On the flight home, I continued my investigation. I called Heather's med school financial aid office, posing as Heather with a question about my account. The administrator confirmed what I'd suspected. Heather had received a partial scholarship covering about 30% of her tuition, something she'd never mentioned. Through social media sleuthing, I also discovered my mother had bought a new car last year, something she couldn't afford on her limited income. The timeline matched when I'd increased my payments at their request, citing unexpected med school expenses. By the time I landed in Portland, exhaustion was replaced by cold determination. I spent the week consulting with Melissa, my financial advisor, and a therapist I started seeing to process my family dynamics. Everyone agreed. It was time to stand up for myself. Melissa drafted a formal document outlining the loan, with a reasonable 5-year repayment plan once Heather started her residency. My financial advisor helped calculate appropriate interest. My therapist helped me prepare emotionally for the confrontation. From social media, I learned Heather and my mother were extending their Boston stay for a week of celebration before returning to Portland, where Heather would spend a month before starting her residency on the West Coast. That gave me time to prepare. Waiting for their return, I rode a roller coaster of emotions. Some days I felt strong and justified. Other days, doubt and old habits of capitulation plagued me. What if I was overreacting? What if this destroyed any chance of a relationship with my only family? Then I'd remember standing in that reception hall, being publicly dismissed after years of sacrifice, and my resolve would harden. I reminded myself, a relationship built on exploitation wasn't worth preserving without fundamental change. In quieter moments I grieved, not just for the $36,000, but for the family I'd always wanted but never had. For the sister who could tell me I didn't belong after I helped make it possible. For the mother who never saw me as worthy of the same love she gave Heather. A week after graduation I got another text from James. They're coming back tomorrow. Heather got a job offer at Pacific Northwest Medical Center with a signing bonus. Your mom is already talking about having Heather buy her a new sofa set to thank her for her support during med school. That was the final straw. I thanked James, though I still wasn't sure of his motives. That evening, I finalized my 3-part plan with Melissa's help. The formal letter presenting the financial support as a loan now due. Evidence they'd misrepresented Heather's financial needs. The scholarship, luxury expenditures. A clear boundary-setting conversation about our relationship moving forward. As I prepared for their return, I felt a strange calm replace the emotional turbulence. For the first time in my life I was putting myself first, standing up for my own worth. Whatever happened next, I'd face it with the dignity always denied me within my family. Let them come home, I thought. Let them discover their doormat had finally stood up. Exactly 1 week after graduation, Heather and my mother returned to Portland. My mother called that evening, her voice syrupy sweet. Audrey, darling, we're back. Heather has wonderful news. A position at Pacific Northwest Medical Center with a signing bonus. We're having a celebration dinner tomorrow at Lamian. You're invited, but it's $90 per person, so bring cash. I kept my voice neutral. Actually, I have an important meeting tomorrow. Please give Heather my congratulations. There was a pause. Then her voice turned cold. This is your sister's first job as a doctor. Surely your little business can wait. I'm afraid not, I replied calmly. By the way, did you receive the graduation gift I left for Heather? The watch. Yes, it was adequate. Though Heather was hoping for something more substantial. Dr. Wilkins' family gave her a down payment for a condo. I bit back a retort about how my $36,000 wasn't substantial enough. Instead I said, I see. Well, I need to go. A document is being delivered to both of you tomorrow that requires your attention. Before she could question me, I ended the call and blocked both her and Heather's numbers. Then I texted James. Thank you for your kindness. A document is being delivered to Heather tomorrow. I'd appreciate if you could ensure she reads it. He replied quickly. I will. And for what it's worth, I think you deserve better than how they've treated you. The next morning, Melissa's paralegal delivered the formal letter to Heather's apartment and my mother's house. Then I waited. It didn't take long. By noon my office phone rang constantly from unknown numbers, my mother trying to reach me from different phones. I told my assistant to take messages but not put calls through unless from clients. By mid-afternoon, the messages turned frantic and angry. From my mother. How dare you send this ridiculous letter? Call me immediately. From Heather. Whatever game you're playing, it won't work. You gave me that money. Everyone knows it was a gift. I stayed focused on work, though my hands shook with each new message. At 5 p.m. as I prepared to leave, my assistant buzzed me. Miss Reynolds, there's a James Anderson here to see you. He says it's important. Surprised, I told her to send him in. James entered looking uncomfortable but determined. They're at your mother's house going ballistic over that letter, he said without preamble. Heather is threatening to cut you off completely, And your mother is talking about contesting your father's will retroactively. I thought you should know. Thank you for coming, I said, genuinely touched. But why are you helping me? You barely know me, and you're dating my sister. He sighed heavily. I've been uncomfortable with how Heather talks about you since we started dating. When I saw how they treated you at graduation after learning how much you'd contributed, it didn't sit right. My own sister helped me through undergrad. I'm eternally grateful to her. I nodded, appreciating his honesty. What do you think will happen next? They want to meet with you and your lawyer tomorrow. They're consulting an attorney tonight, but I'm not sure what legal ground they think they have. After James left, I called Melissa. We arranged to meet Heather, my mother, and their attorney the next day at her office. I barely slept that night, alternating between anxiety and empowerment. The meeting was tense. Heather and my mother arrived with a nervous young attorney who kept checking his phone. Melissa, in contrast, was professionally confident with folders of documentation laid out. Let's get right to it, Melissa began. My client provided $36,000 over 4 years to support Miss Heather Reynolds through medical school. While there was no formal written contract, we have substantial evidence this was understood by all parties to be a loan, not a gift. Heather's attorney cleared his throat. With all due respect, family financial support for education is typically considered a gift unless explicitly stated otherwise. Melissa smiled thinly. Typically, yes. But we have several factors suggesting otherwise here. She laid out emails, texts, bank records, all annotated. Note that Miss Heather Reynolds repeatedly refers to paying back my client once she begins her medical career. Note the regular payment schedule, consistent with loan behavior rather than gifts. My mother interrupted, her voice shrill. This is absurd. Audrey never mentioned repayment until after she felt slighted at graduation. Slighted? I echoed, breaking my silence. Is that what you call telling me I didn't belong there after I contributed $36,000? Heather looked momentarily ashamed but recovered quickly. You embarrassed me in front of my professors by trying to take credit for my accomplishments. By stating a fact, I corrected. A fact you never shared with them. Why, Heather? Were you ashamed to admit you needed your sister's help? Melissa steered back to the financial matter. Furthermore, we have evidence Miss Heather Reynolds misrepresented her financial needs. She produced documentation about the scholarship and questionable expenditures. At this point, James, sitting quietly beside Heather, spoke up. Heather, did you really have a scholarship you didn't tell Audrey about? Heather shot him a venomous look but didn't deny it. My mother tried a different approach. Audrey, we're family. Whatever perceived slights you think you've suffered, this isn't how family resolves differences. You're right, I agreed, surprising her. Family shouldn't need formal agreements or legal meetings. Family should appreciate sacrifices. Family shouldn't tell someone they don't know their place when they've contributed significantly to another's success. The young attorney, looking uncomfortable, whispered to Heather, who frowned deeply. After 2 hours of back and forth, with Melissa dismantling each argument, we reached an agreement. Heather would repay the $36,000 plus modest interest over 5 years, beginning 3 months after starting residency. Monthly payments would be automatic. As we signed, I felt no triumph, only hollow sadness that it had come to this. My mother refused to look at me. Heather signed with such force her pen tore the paper. As they prepared to leave, I implemented the third part of my plan. One more thing, I said quietly. This resolves the financial aspect, but not the relationship aspect. What relationship? Heather snapped. You've made it clear how you feel about us. No, Heather. You and Mom made it clear how you feel about me at your graduation. I'm simply responding to that clarity. I took a deep breath. Moving forward, I will no longer be available for financial support beyond what we've outlined. I will no longer tolerate being treated as less valuable or less worthy of respect. My mother scoffed. So dramatic. This is why we've always worried about you, Audrey. You take everything so personally. Being told I don't belong at an event I helped make possible is personal, Mom. I stood my ground. I'm not cutting you off. I'm establishing boundaries any healthy relationship should have. They left in a huff, James trailing with an apologetic glance. As soon as they were gone, I collapsed into a chair, emotionally drained. You did well, Melissa assured me. Standing up for yourself is never easy, especially with family. That evening, I wrote a careful social media post, grateful for friends who've supported me through a difficult family situation. Sometimes the hardest lessons teach us who truly values us for who we are, not what we can provide. I didn't name names, but I knew Heather and my mother would recognize themselves. The response was overwhelming. Friends, colleagues, clients shared support and their own stories. Mutual friends reached out privately. I was honest but not vindictive. Over the next weeks, James told me Heather tried to damage my business reputation, telling people I was unstable and vindictive. Fortunately, my years of professional integrity spoke louder. I never responded to rumors, never engaged in drama. My silence and continued success spoke volumes, and gradually people saw the truth. The financial agreement was in place. Boundaries were set. But the emotional aftermath was just beginning. I knew the hardest part was yet to come. 3 months after graduation, the date of the first loan repayment arrived. I'd marked it but tried not to fixate. I was focusing on my business, thriving now that I could reinvest money that had gone to Heather's education. I'd even started dating again. A kind, supportive man named David who knew about my family situation and respected my boundaries. When the automated payment didn't come, I wasn't surprised, disappointed but not surprised. I waited 24 hours before Melissa sent a reminder. The response came from my mother via email. Heather can't make the payment due to unexpected expenses setting up her new apartment. Additionally, I've been having heart problems. Stress isn't helping. If you cared about family, you'd understand. I showed the email to my therapist. Classic manipulation, she observed. Practical excuses with health concerns designed to induce guilt. How does it make you feel? Angry, I admitted, but also tired. I'm tired of the games. Tired of being the only one expected to sacrifice. That's healthy progress, she assured me. Recognizing the pattern is significant. After consulting Melissa, I responded firmly but unemotionally. I understand transitions can be financially challenging. However, the agreement included a 3-month grace period for initial expenses. The payment schedule remains. I hope Mom's health improves soon. This prompted a flurry of dramatic emails. Heather claimed residency was too demanding for financial matters. My mother's heart problems escalated to claims of a minor cardiac event, though when I discreetly checked with her neighbor, she'd been seen gardening energetically that morning. After 2 weeks with no payment, I decided direct confrontation was needed. I texted James. I need to speak with both of them face to face. Can you help arrange this? He responded. They're having Sunday dinner at your mom's this weekend. I'll make sure they're both there at 3 p.m. That Sunday, I drove to my mother's house, the home where I'd grown up feeling like a stranger. I'd prepared what to say, practiced with my therapist, but my heart still raced as I knocked. James answered, giving an encouraging nod before leading me to the living room. Heather and my mother sat with defensive hostility. What are you doing here? My mother demanded. You can't just show up unannounced. Actually, it wasn't unannounced, I replied calmly, nodding to James. We need to talk about the missed payment and why we've reached this point. If you've come to threaten more legal action, save your breath, Heather snapped. I've been working 100-hour weeks setting up my new life. The payment is delayed, not forgotten. I took a deep breath. This isn't just about the money. The agreement is important, but this is about years of being treated as less valuable, less worthy of respect. Here we go again with the victim routine, my mother said dramatically, hand over her heart. It's not a routine, I said, voice steady. For as long as I can remember, this family has had 2 standards, one for Heather, one for me. When Dad died, most inheritance went to Heather. When I built a successful business, it was dismissed as a little business. When I contributed $36,000 to Heather's education, sacrificing my expansion and comfort, it was treated as obligation, not generosity. Heather rolled her eyes, but James watched intently, nodding slightly. I continued. And then, at the graduation my money helped make possible, I was publicly humiliated. Told I didn't belong. Told I didn't know my place. My voice cracked slightly. You're exaggerating, my mother said, but her eyes slid away. Am I? Your job is done. You shouldn't be here. Your exact words, Heather. And Mom, you laughed and said I didn't know my place in front of everyone. To my surprise, Heather didn't deny it immediately. She looked down. I was nervous. It was a big day. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it then? I asked. I just wanted to impress my professors. I didn't want them thinking I couldn't have done it on my own. But you didn't do it entirely on your own, I pointed out. And that's okay. Most people need help. There's no shame in acknowledging that. An uncomfortable silence fell. James cleared his throat. Heather, you told me yourself, without Audrey's support, you'd have taken loans that burdened you for years. Heather shot him a betrayed look. Whose side are you on? I'm not on a side, he replied firmly. I'm trying to help you all see the truth. My mother jumped in. Audrey has always been jealous of your accomplishments, Heather. Don't let her guilt trip you now. That's not true, I said, feeling a wave of exhaustion. I've always been proud of Heather. I've never begrudged her success or support. All I've wanted is equal recognition of my worth, my accomplishments, my value to this family. Something in my voice reached Heather. She looked up with uncertainty. I never thought, she began then stopped. You never thought what? I prompted gently. I never thought you felt that way, she finished. You always seemed so together, so independent, like you didn't need anyone. I laughed softly without humor. I had to be independent. No one was offering to help me the way everyone rallied to help you. Another silence fell, different this time. My mother fidgeted. Heather seemed lost in thought. Finally, Heather spoke again. I'm sorry about what I said at graduation. It was cruel and untrue. You absolutely belong there. Without your help, it would have been much harder. Her words, the first genuine apology I'd received from her in years, hit me physically. I hadn't expected this. Hadn't dared hope. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot. My mother wasn't ready to concede. This is ridiculous. Audrey shows up making demands, and now you're apologizing after everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? I asked quietly. All my life I've heard about everything you've done for Heather. What support have you ever given me that wasn't grudging or conditional? She opened her mouth, then closed it, unable to produce an example. The truth is, I continued, I don't need anything from either of you anymore except basic respect and acknowledgement of my worth. I've built my own life, success, support network, but I would like a real relationship with my family if that's possible. Heather nodded slowly. I think I would like that too, and I will make the payment this week. I promise. My mother stood abruptly. I need to lie down. All this drama is bad for my heart. She left the room, a familiar tactic to avoid accountability. With just the three of us, the atmosphere shifted. James put his arm around Heather, who looked drained but lighter. I really am sorry, Audrey, she said again. I got so caught up in proving myself, living up.